LeetCode 262, trips and users. Write a solution to find the cancellation rate of requests with unbanned users each day between 10/1/2013 and 10/3/2013. Round cancellation rate to 2 decimal points. Return the results table in any order. The result format is in the following example. We're going to solve this hard LeetCode question in both SQL and Python. Let's start coding. All right, so first thing we're going to be taking a look at is two different tables. We have a trips table as well as a users table. In the trips table, we have an ID, client ID, driver ID, city ID, status, and request at. But in the users table, we have user ID, banned, as well as the role. So this is going to be a fun one. As you can see, our example over here, we have this trips table, the users table, and our output is we're essentially grouping by this day. So 10/1, 10/2, 10/3, and then we have this cancellation rate over here. And I talk about why all this is happening. So there are 4 requests in total, 2 of them which were canceled. However, request with ID equals 2 was used by a banned client. So you can see user ID 2 banned is yes over here. So 1/3, 0 to 2, and then 1 out of 2. But here's the interesting thing. We're going to have to essentially join into this users table twice. We're going to have to look at this client ID as well as this driver ID to see if they are specifically banned. So easiest way, at least that I would go approach this, would be using a CTE. And we'll do 2 joins to this user table. The first one we'll do just total rides, find that number, then canned rides, find that number. By day, we're going to just group by this. And then specifically what we can do is just join those. Could potentially do a case statement also, but for me, at least like CTE was the first thing that came to mind. We can join on these specific days. So let's do that. The first thing we're going to do is grab our total rides. So I'm just going to label the CTE this time. So I'm going to say with total rides as, and I know in past videos, I just run the select whatever's inside over here first, but I'll explain why. So we're just going to do a select. First thing that we're going to do inside over here is we're going to grab our request at. This is going to be that specific day that we're going to be grouping by. So make sure we grab a request at. All right. Up next, what we're going to do is we're going to grab our count, and I'm going to just call this as all trips. So we're going to do as all trips. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is grab these from the tables. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab this from trips. So from trips, okay, pretty easy. And now we're going to do 2 left joins into this user table. So let's grab left join. I'm going to call this users. I'm going to call this U1. And then we're going to call on U1.users ID equals T.client ID. And then what we're going to do is this again. So left join users U2, great band, on U2.users ID equals T.driver ID. So we're going to essentially get the information for their drivers as well as our specific user of the app, which is our client ID. Now we need to filter. So I'm just going to say where, and we're going to take a look at this request at, because it specifies that we need to see 10/1, 10/2, and 10/3. So we need to make sure we're in that range. So I'm going to say over here where this request at is greater than or equal to, and then I'm going to populate 2013. I first read this as 2023, 10/01. So 10/01. And then we're going to do and this request that needs to be less than or equal to the 10/3. So grab this 10/03 over here and just change that sign. Okay. And then what we're going to do is say and U1.banned equals no. And then we're going to say and U2.banned equals no as well. And then lastly, what we're going to do is group by our request at. So group by this over here. Let's just add another space. And this is essentially going to grab a ton of information. I'm just going to say select star from total rides. And that's the reason why I just didn't do the select, because we're going to do 2 of these. I'm just going to run this right now. Again, I don't think this is probably the most efficient solution, but this is what came to mind at first. And I do have an error. Let's say the multiple t.client could not be used. Oh, well, I didn't put an alias for that table. You can see I just left it as trips. I was like, why are we having an error? And it says wrong answer, obviously. And our output over here is request stat, and you can see all the trips, 3, 2, and 2. So we're looking good right now. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna essentially copy the majority of this code, and I'm just gonna paste it down below over here. And I'm gonna rename this and get rid of width. When you're gonna use multiple CTEs, you only use width at the first one. So put a comma here at the first part of it, because that's what we need. You can either put a comma here or here. I've seen both. Personally, like, I don't really care as long as it just kind of standardized in the code. So we can say canned rides. And I should mention that each organization kind of has standards that they want to specifically see. Not always the case, but it can happen. And it depends on kind of who your DBA is or if there's rules in place. Whole other discussion. But we have canned rides as, we're still grabbing our request stat. We're going to do our count. Instead of all trips this time, we're going to say canned trips like this. All right. And then from trips, we're still joining U1 and U2 over here, which I didn't even realize I have capitalization issues. That looked really bad and ugly. So I'm going to just fix that really quick. So still request at 10.1, 10.3, U1 banned, and U2 banned. Now we need to take a look at the status. So we're going to say and over here, and we're going to grab our status. So our status was from this trips table. So it's going to be t.status, and then it's going to be equal. And we're going to say the first one is going to be canceled by driver. I'm just going to copy it from the past, or copy it from the left over here. And I'm going to say or, and again, I'm just going to copy all this and paste this. And instead of driver this time, I'm just going to say client. So again, it's like essentially the same code as above, which makes me think probably way easier if I just did this in some sort of case statement. Oh, well, not the end of the world. But we have and status canceled by driver, or it's going to be canceled by client. And this is an and. So this time we should get a lot smaller number. How we can just do this basic select is we can just do select star from canned rides. So we can just see what's in this second CTE. I'm going to run this. And wrong answer, but you can see that on 10.1 we had 1 canned ride, and on 10.3 we had 1 canned ride. So we're looking great. Now let's combine these 2 tables that we essentially created together. So the first one is I'm going to select, and I'm just going to do a select star right now, and I'm going to say from total rides, which is our first one over here. So grab total rides. This from is horrible, but from total rides, I'm going to name this as TR. And I'm going to do a left join. So the reason why we can't do an inner join is we're actually missing 10.2. And if we did an inner join, we'd be missing that data. So a little bit of a heads up, but we can say left join. And we're going to join our canned rides. So canned rides, let's name that one as CR. So CR on, and we'll say tr.requestat over here equals cr.requestat, which we can just paste that again over here. This will populate everything, but this will not be the correct answer. So now we need to grab our specific columns. So first thing that we need to do is grab our tr.requestat. So this will give us all 3 days. And we're going to rename this as day because that's what we want for our final output. All right. And let me just clean up a little bit of this over here. I know I didn't write the prettiest code, but sometimes you want to at least have nice code, especially if you're doing this in a live interview. All right. And now we need to take a look at this cancellation rate. So we have to calculate that. It's asking for a few other things as well. Let's just basically do the bare minimum first. So the bare minimum would be canned trips over here, which is this count, divided by all trips, which is what we had as our count at the very top, and just label that as, what was it? Cancellation rate. So as cancellation rate, which you can just grab that over here, put this in single quotes because they won't have a space in it. They want to play games a little bit, but in terms of that. So that would be the bare minimum. But this question asked for a few other things. It asked for this to be rounded to 2 decimal places. And also we still have technically a null value in cantrips for 10.2. So we have to address that. Let's address the null value. So in MS SQL, you can do is null. So is null, then put this over here. We'll say cantrips, put a comma over here and 0. All right, so now you have that. Next, what we're gonna have to do is cast. So that way we have a float number. So what I'm gonna do is cast. We have this is null over here. And then I'm gonna say as float. So grab that. So as float, all capitalization over there. And then I think next, what we're gonna have to do is round at the very end. So what we're gonna say is round this. And we're gonna round to 2 spots. So what we're going to do is all trips over here. We're going to put a comma and also a 2. So let me just make sure that we have the correct parentheses around everything. So round, we have 1 over here. Cast, we have 1 over here. Is null, we have 1 over here. Then after this cantrips, we have 1. Okay, that looks good. Then as float, we are actually missing 1. So let's put that there. And then all trips, we need to have 1 here at the very end. We'll see that as cancellation rate. And I think we should be good. So let's just run this code. It's always easy to make errors on this, but I think that will give us the solution. And it's been accepted. So let me kind of explain one more time what I'm doing. First, I'm doing a CTE just to grab the total amount of rides. Pretty easy. We just have a where clause over here and we're grouping by the stay. Then we have the canned rides, again, where clause, but this time we're doing at the very end the status where it's canceled by driver or the client. Again, U1, U2 can't be banned, and this date range needs to be 10.1 to 10.3. And lastly, what we're going to do is grab the request that day. We're going to do this calculation, the is null, the casting it to float, and also rounding it to 2 spots from total rides, which is our first one. And then we're going to left join our canned rides. The reason also why is each day has to technically have at least 1 specific ride if there's going to be something that's been canceled. So I put that over there, request that. That's how we're joining those. And yeah, 32 lines essentially, but that gives us our solution. Let's take a look at the Python Pandas side of things. All right, so now let's take a look at the Pandas side of things. We're going to start off essentially like what we did in SQL and do all rides. So all rides equals, I'm going to do pd.merge. Then I'm going to merge our trips users left on, and we'll do client ID, and then right on equals user ID, and then how is going to be left. So how equals left. All right, then what I'm going to do again is all rides. pd.merge. Then this time we're going to put all rides here and users. So all rides users left on this time driver ID. Right on users ID. How left. And this time, since this is going to be a little bit more complicated, we're going to add in suffixes. So suffixes equals, and we're going to do underscore client. And then the next one is going to be driver. Driver, like that. Hopefully it didn't cut off on the code on the screen. All right. Now what we're going to do is set up our not banned. So not banned equals all rides over here. And we're going to say inside over here 2 things. And we're going to say like that, put our parentheses and do an and. All right. And inside over here, we're going to say all rides, and we'll say banned client. And we're going to say that's equal to no. So equal to no. And actually, you can just pretty much copy and paste that instead of putting everything over here. And this is going to, instead of being banned client, it's going to be driver. So driver like that. Okay. Now we can say not banned. We'll say request at. So request at equals pd dot to date time, and then put this not banned. And inside over here, we'll say request at. All right, so now we have all of that over here. We need to set our start and end dates. So start date, end date. We can put this in our code, the next line, the actual dates, but it just makes it a little bit cleaner this way. And pd dot to date time, so like all this junk again. Just that, and then inside the first one, I'll do 2013 10/01. This time it's going to be 03. Okay. And then we can say not banned days equals not banned. And inside over here, kind of the same thing as we did before, right? So we're going to grab that and we're going to say, and we'll put this over here. We'll have not banned, and we'll grab over here request at. So let's just actually just populate that. And we're going to say is greater than or equal to our start date. Copy this code and just change it now for the end date. So grab this end date and flip this over because it needs to be less than or equal to that end date. And now we have essentially our where clause for this request at for 10.1 through 10.3. And we also have the ban client and ban driver is no. Looking pretty good. So now what we need to do is all rides count. So all rides count equals, and we're going to say not ban days. So we're going to group by. So group by, we're going to group by our request at. So request at like this. All right. Then what we're going to do is dot size, and then reset our index. So reset index, and we'll say name equals count. So name equals count. Then what we're going to have is our canned rides. So canned rides equals, and we're going to have not banned days. And what we're going to look specifically inside for not banned days. Inside over here, and then we're going to say two things again. So we're going to say that, or we're going to have an or and say that. So essentially we're going to look at not banned days, and we're going to look at our status. So status, we're going to say that's going to be equal to, and this one is going to be canceled by driver like that. And then the other one is going to be essentially canceled by client. So just grab that, populate that over here. Again, sorry if it did cut out. Okay. And we're going to do canned rides count. So canned rides count. It's going to be equal to canned rides. We're going to group by again. There's a request at. And it's going to be the same thing, all this rest of this code for all rides. So just copy everything this group by down. All right, so that's our canned count. And now we can start putting everything together. So we're going to say final results equals pd.merge. And we're going to merge our all rides count. So all rides count as well as our canned count. That over here. I'm going to say on equals request at because that's going to be the same in both data frames. All right. And then we're going to say how equals left And let's add in our suffixes again. So I'm just going to say suffixes equals, we'll say underscore all, and then canned. So canned like that. Then what we're going to say is final results. We're going to add in our cancellation rate. Just final results. Cancellation rate. That's going to be equal to final results. And we're going to do count, but this time since we have the suffixes, we'll count canned divided by, and then we'll say final results count, and then we're going to say all. All right. Then what we're going to do is fill our NAs. So final results cancellation rate, because we're going to have the NA from that null value on this canned count. So we're going to say that's equal to, and we're going to say dot fill NA0, dot fill NA, populate A0 there. Then what we're going to do is our rounding. So we're just going to copy this, change this last line to round to 2. And finally, we have one more line. We're going to say final results equals final results dot rename. We'll say columns equal, inside over here we'll say request at, and we're going to say that's going to be day. So day like that. And then we're going to return our final results. And inside over here, we're going to return day as well as our cancellation rate. So it's, hopefully we've made no errors. I'm just going to run this. If this works, awesome. Now I'll just debug it really quick. It's a lot of coding, and we'll go through how the solution worked again. And the error, it looks like at the very end where I have this canceled by client for not banned days, I have actually one extra parenthesis. That's the first error I noticed. So let's run this again. Another runtime error. And that error, if you go over here to the driver, it wasn't an underscore. So make sure the underscore is there. I had it in front of that parenthesis. I had that under. I had this before that single quote. Let's rerun that. Another runtime error. All right, final results. And that error also comes from another underscore from canned. Run it again. And now it's been accepted. 3 small bugs. It's a lot easier, or a lot harder to code and talk and explain yourself than you would think. But let's go through this again. First thing, we're just going to merge this trips and users table. We're looking at the client first. Now we're going to do this again on the second line. This time we're going to add in the drivers. So same exact type of merge, except now we have this all rides. And then I also put the suffixes like the extensions at the very end, client and driver. So that way we aren't confused a little bit. Other videos, I sometimes allow it to just be X and Y, but with how much that's going on in this question, it's so much easier just to put the suffixes. Then we're looking at not banned. So we're going to filter out anything that's been banned because we don't want this in our data. And then I'm going to do the request at and make this into a date time. Now we're going to do our start date and end date. We're going to make sure that these are date times themselves. And then we're going to filter to make sure that we have only 10.1 through 10.3 because that's what's requesting this problem. Then we're going to count all of the rides. We're going to group by this request at like we did on the SQL side of things. We're going to grab the size of each of those and call that as our count. We have to reset our index also since we're changing essentially the data frame that we're doing with this group by. Same thing with canned rides, except before we do this group by, we're going to filter specifically for rides that were canceled by driver or canceled by the client or the user. Lastly, we're going to create a new data frame, which is going to be called final results. We're going to merge the count from all rides as well as canned count. And we're going to be doing this on the request at, which is that day. Okay, left join. We're going to add their suffixes one more time. which is going to be all in can just to make our calculations easier at the end and know what's going on. Then I'm going to start working on that calculation. So count can divided by count all. There's going to be some null values in this can because they don't have anything on 10.2. So we're going to fill the NA with 0 after this calculation has been done. Then lastly, we're going to round it by 2. We're going to rename this requested at column to day. And we're going to return our final data frame, which is going to be the day column as well as our cancellation rate. And that is the final answer to this hard LeetCode question. Hey, you made it to the end of the video, which means you were able to solve this hard LeetCode question in both SQL and Python. Hope you're able to learn something along the way. And if you have a more efficient solution, which I know there is out there, make sure to post it in the comment section down below so others can see it. And if you're brand new to the channel, make sure to subscribe. I'm uploading about 2 to 3 videos every single week, and it's just not LeetCode or interview type of videos. I'm also taking you in-depth tutorials on like machine learning, as well as like OpenAI and other SQL and Python tutorials. All right, I'll catch you in another video.